Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to term three. Let me just tell you what we are doing for this term. Okay, we are focusing on two things: flowers for Algernon as well as poetry. For FFA, we have already worked through how to do a PBQ, so we are going to look at how to do a full essay. Okay, in line with what an upper sec essay is going to look like. All right. For the second half of the term, we will be looking at poetry, mostly Singaporean poetry. We have a whole bunch of poems, and we'll be looking at what it means to be Singaporean, right? Issues of identity. How does poetry help us to negotiate, to discover, to interrogate what it means to be Singaporean? Okay, not just that, but other forms of identity as well. Okay. So what are we doing for today's lesson? Today's lesson, we are doing part one, which I mentioned earlier, Flowers for Algernon. We are going to go through a breakdown of how to write an essay. Okay, now, we have already done this in Sec 1 before, okay? But we're going to revisit it. It's going to be a bit more complex. It will be, a bit more will be demanded of you, all right? So let's get started. Okay, you should have this worksheet. Your teacher should have given it to you on either Google Classroom or the Google site. You should have a copy available. Okay, please make sure that you have a copy, the soft copy available. Okay, so the question that we are looking at today is over here. Okay, I've highlighted it in yellow. How does Keys make Charlie such a striking character in the play? And explain your answer. Okay, now what you will see here, I've highlighted the text in bold. Sorry, there's a typo. It's following question. It says, remember to support ideas with relevant details from the text. What does this mean? You must have evidence to support your point. Okay. We recall for mid-year, there were some people, remember for the poem, there were people who just wrote about what they thought instead of what the text was saying. That is not going to get you anywhere. Okay, so you must make sure you have relevant details. You must have the appropriate details. Okay, so let's go back. How does Keys make Charlie such a striking character? Straight away, we see there's some keywords, right? How? Okay, make Charlie such a striking character. So striking is a keyword. Charlie is the focus. Okay, and explain your answer. Okay, so when we look at the keyword straight away, we are getting a sense of what is required from the question. Okay, so I have broken it down here for you. Let me use a different color. Okay, if you look at the step one, the first thing we need to do in order to answer this question properly is to understand what it's really asking for. Okay, so when we're talking about how, we are talking about steps. So what techniques? Okay, how? Imagine I am asking you, how do I make a cake? Right? How do I bake a cake? I say step one, I take the flour, I take the water, I take the milk, so on and so forth. So you must give me a step by step. Okay, the focus here is technique. Okay, sorry. Okay, and we know Charlie is the focus, so you must talk about Charlie, obviously. Okay, then we get to the next keyword, striking. Now, what does striking mean? If I say something is very striking, that means it draws my attention. And why does it draw my attention? Because it's unusual, or it is unique, or it is interesting. Okay, something about Charlie is interesting. Okay, so why is Charlie so interesting? Essentially, how does Keys make Charlie so interesting? Okay, now when you look at the question, it says explain. So you cannot just say, oh yeah, Mr. Low, Charlie is very interesting, but you must explain why. How is this the case? And most importantly, so what? Why is Charlie interesting? How is he made so interesting? So what if it is so interesting? And that is how we get to this point where it says, how is this important in the play? And when we look at this in the play, what is FFA trying to say? What are the themes that FFA is talking about? Okay, it's about the value of intelligence. It is about the treatment of the mentally challenged. It is forcing us to re-examine society, right? You know, what kind of society do we live in? Are we complicit? Do we commit the same? Do we make the same mistakes? Okay. So how is this important? How So if you put it together, is what is Keys doing? Okay, what is Keys doing to use Charlie in order to deliver the messages of the play? Okay. So once we have broken down the question, it then lets us understand what we need to do. Okay, which is here in step 2. What is so striking about Charlie? How does Keys bring it out? And then you put them together. Okay, so this part, right, guys, this is the real explanation. You know, you always talk about PEEL. This is the explanation. Explanation is not describing what is happening. Okay, it is telling me how it is working on my brain. Right. So if we look at this, what is so striking about Charlie? Naturally, you will have, this is an essay, right? An essay needs 3 different points, which then leads us to step 3. We then figure out how we have step point 1, point 2, point 3, and it all leads us into how Charlie functions as a character in order to do what? In order to express the ideas that the whole play is concerned with. Okay, which is obviously, Charlie is obviously a symbol. He's a representation of the mentally disabled, right? But at the same time, he is also a cautionary tale. Through Charlie as a character, we see the unsavory aspects of society, but also some of the kinder aspects. Okay, so now we know I must come up with, what do I do as a student? I have to come up with 3 different features. I need to prove them, and then I need to put them together. Okay, so if you look at the next page, what we have here is a structure. Okay, and I have broken them down into point 1, point 2, point 3. Okay, they are very similar. Let me just demonstrate how to do it. I'll give you a few examples. Okay, so what is striking or interesting about Charlie? Let's work through. So maybe one thing that I find very interesting about Charlie is his innocence, right? Okay, how did I come up with this? Charlie is the only character. Okay, it makes him unique, right? It's what makes Charlie stand out from everybody else. He is the only innocent character in the play who is, or shall we say, it could even talk about his naivety, right? That he is very, he's very pure in a sense. He's untainted by society. Okay, and how do we see his innocence? Okay, so that is where you have to bring this out. Okay, how do we know he's so innocent? Okay, maybe one example I could think of is scene 16. Okay, where Charlie he's unaware that his colleagues bully him, right? Okay, he believes that they are also good people. Okay, so of course go and come up with another example. So now working from this example, the next question becomes, so what, what I have to do here, okay, is to pick out the detail, critical details. Okay, I don't need you to describe the whole of scene 16 to me. Pick out the 1 or 2 details, okay, that the best is if you can quote, okay, 7 words or less, quote exactly what shows Charlie's innocence. Just 1 line. Okay, pick the best line. Again, if you keep repeating, there's no use. Okay, so back to this. Why does Keys want to do this? Okay, perhaps I'm thinking through here. When his colleagues bully him, so when Charlie's colleagues bully him, what happens? I know that there is pity, and what is being emphasized? Okay, it emphasizes Charlie's vulnerability, right? Sorry, typo. Okay, which then, what does it make us do? It makes us pity him, right? Or we sympathize with Charlie, right? And so what is happening here is that Charlie is being used to highlight the problems the mentally challenged face in society, right? And so this, if you can see, this is related to FFA's themes. Okay, so I'm seeing how the character, okay, what's interesting about character, eventually feeds into the ideas that Keyes wants to convey. Okay, so of course down here, you notice that we haven't done example 1B because you have to do that by yourself. If I'm going to say something along the same lines, then I should also pick another example which emphasizes Charlie's vulnerability. Right? So let me give you another example of what might be a striking feature. What is interesting or unusual about Charlie? One thing that happens to Charlie is his development, right? You want to say his rise and fall. Also can. It's up to you. You can pick something that is unusual, interesting, that no other character experiences. A defining characteristic of Charlie. What happens to Charlie? Okay, and of course, you have to think through. Okay, let's think through. What are the examples? What happens in the play that really shows this to us? And then, why did the playwright do this? Why does he want to highlight this about Charlie? What is he trying to tell us? Okay, so when you put all this together, what you do is you get a lot of data that we are going to use to write the essay. Okay, so that is your task. Okay, what have we done today? We have done a breakdown of the essay question. Okay, we have the structure of essay planning. Correct? So then that leads us to the next question of homework. Now, before you come to class, you should have filled up your planner. Which means come up with the points. That means the striking features. Give me the examples. And I want the analysis. What does it show? Why is the author doing this? Okay. What will happen is that we will come back. We will do group work in threes. We will write a group essay. And then we will review that. And why are we writing the group essay? We are going to take this slowly, work through it. Okay, we will write the group essay. The teachers will mark it, so on and so forth. So that this is preparation for weighted assessment 3. Okay, which will be a full essay, which in turn is prep for end of years. Okay, so please do this properly. All right, so say again, this is due and the first physical lesson of term 3. Okay, so just bring it back to school, whether it's in soft copy or hard copy, both are fine. All right, okay, hope to see you all back in school. Stay safe.